For joining us today, guys. We're here to talk to you about reactivity and all the things we see on a pretty regular basis. We both see a lot of reactive dogs. So we're going to talk about some different things. We're going to talk about what it looks like, what is causing the reactivity. There's a lot of ideas, some of them good, some of them bad, about what is causing that behavior, and then how you can start working through it in a combination of therapies and management. So first, let's talk about what reactivity looks like. We use a lot of labels, but we like to break them down. Reactivity can mean different things to different people, so it's important to specify exactly what we're seeing these dogs do. So the most typical things I think we probably see are what we call barky, lungy behaviors, which is, pretty much exactly like it sounds. It's those dogs that tend to fly off at the end of the leash and bark, lunge. They're up on their back legs. Sometimes they're hopping a bit, depending on the dog. What other things, Crystal? Sometimes they're stiff, which, we tend to think of as more like angry or aggressive behavior.
Yeah. It's really any of those embarrassing behaviors that your dog displays at the end of the leash that you wish didn't happen any longer. And it can be at short distances, it can be at very long distances. It doesn't matter if it's a car, a bicycle, another dog, a human, a bunny. What they are reacting to does not matter. It's just we are talking about all things that look like your dog flipping out like a ninja at the end of the leash.
Sure. Actually, another typical thing I see in a lot of reactivity stuff, especially on leash, and people are often surprised by it, is if you are walking two dogs together, or sometimes they'll even turn back on the handler. It's pretty common for the dog, or if both dogs are reacting, because that also happens, for one of them to turn on the other dog that they're walking with. They get snappy and bitey. A fight can break out. In my experience, it doesn't usually get into a fight. It just gets in that snappy, snarly. It's still scary. We still don't want it to happen. But that is very common. Big dogs, little dogs. People are always surprised when they hear it, but I see it a lot. So what is causing all of these behaviors in your dog?
So typically, I classify these dogs into two categories. One, overly friendly, excited. So being on a leash is frustrating for the dog because they want to go and say hello to every being that they see, but they're on a leash and that's not appropriate. And so then they develop those frustrated, barky kind of behaviors. Typically, I see these in the super friendly dogs, like our labs or the super friendly bully breeds, who think the whole world is put on this planet to pet them, to come to them so that they can, usually put their paws on them and give them kisses in the face or jump on them. Again, on a leash, not appropriate. And also these dogs need to learn that not everyone wants to pet them, which breaks their poor little heart because they do want everyone to pet them. But again, all of your neighbors do not want to pet your dog. And it makes for a very long walk if you have to stop and let your dog get pets from everyone. And then the second category that I see with these dogs are the ones that are afraid. So the ones that are barking and carrying on and acting aggressively or seemingly aggressively to keep the other dog away from them. And so really these are one, event learning. They learn very quickly that the barking and the carrying on does in fact keep you from approaching the other person or the other dog with them on a leash. And it also keeps the other person and dog walking past them usually much quicker. So those fearful dogs learn very, very quickly that acting like a fool and going completely bananas serves a purpose for them. And so then we have to unpack how they're feeling, and give them that alternate behavior to get what they want, which is the space from the other dog.
I tell most clients, if your dog is a barky, lungy dog, the very first thing you should do is get them some more space. To me, barking and lunging, regardless of, the source behind the barky, lungy, the needed result is still the same. We need to get more space. Either that dog can't handle being so close to this thing and still not being able to get to it, because they're so excited and they see it, and so everyone else needs to come and pet them, so they need more space, or that dog is terrified and may want to eat that other dog or person or whatever, and so they also need more space. So in the beginning, the best and fastest thing to do is to move your dog away, and take note of the things that are going to trigger them. I tell clients all the time, in the beginning, while we're working on it, you can do things like, when you see someone coming, move your dog behind a car and start playing a little game with them, or scatter some food. Get more distance if you can. If you're on a trail and you have to walk a few feet into the woods, do it. All of these things. You can turn around and go the other way. You can go down a cul-de-sac sometimes and get more distance from the other dog. I have also gone up into people's driveways when there weren't other options. It's not pretty, but no one's ever said anything to me about it either. It's pretty clear what I'm doing, and I've never had anyone have a problem with it. But that is definitely your beginning steps, is you're going to manage the situation by creating more space. And for some dogs who it's really severe for, we recommend actually not walking them in the neighborhood right now. It's really difficult for them to do this, to get through a neighborhood walk. And every time they're blowing their lids and going through this, again, we get that spike of cortisol, and it's going to be harder for them to deal with the next time. It's just such an adrenaline rush. And they're practicing this behavior, they're adding to it. So we want to stop this behavior. That's what management is we're preventing the behavior from happening whenever possible. So that way we can start working through it, which is the therapy side and the training side. So Crystal, how do you usually start working through these things once you are able to get the space that the dog needs?
So once we flip over from management into the therapy part of it, that looks like a lot more controlled setups than you could ever get in a neighborhood walk. So part of the challenge with walking in the neighborhood is, one, you can't call all of your neighbors and tell them not to walk their dog for the next half an hour so that you can get around the block with your dog. And two, you never know what is coming, especially in neighborhoods that are very tight, with the houses very close together. There's always the possibility that you're going to walk past a neighbor's house and they're going to come out of their garage at exactly the same time you were at the end of their driveway. And that is stressful for you, and it's stressful for your dog too. So in those moments, we like to move to larger spaces. So we move to empty fields or parking lots, or fields at a park where we can get all of the space that your dog needs in order to still function in those moments that you would never be able to get walking through your neighborhood.
See the triggers at such a distance before they ever get, you want, like you said, big open areas, so that way you can see the trigger way before it becomes a problem.
Yeah. And that's a big part of the therapy of making your dog feel more comfortable about these situations, is that the trigger is far enough away that they can go, oh, well, it's over there and I didn't die, and mom's giving me cookies and I'm not dead. So maybe this is not so bad. Whereas in your neighborhood, when they show up 50 feet away or come around the corner all of a sudden, that cortisol spike happens so quickly that your dog launches into completely bananas, and all of that cortisol happens, and it takes 72 hours for all of that cortisol to work out of their system. So you go down the street and one dog happens, your dog is already at a 10 because of that first dog, and then the second dog happens and you're done for at that point. Whereas when working in those big open spaces, we have plenty of space that maybe the dog is very, very tiny in the distance and they're barely recognize that it's a dog, and we don't get that cortisol spike. So we don't get the, oh my God, there it is. We get the, well, look at it way over there. Well, that's strange. And that's part of that therapy, is exposure in such small increments that your dog can actually change how they are feeling about these situations and make the progress that they need so that they can walk across the street from the other dog.
Yeah, you want to do exposure without flooding them. You're not going to take a reactive dog and go throw them into the middle of a dog park. You're going to ease in tiny increments that they can handle and they can learn from and have positive feelings about. Yeah, we're not going to just toss them into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same thing for the dogs that are overly friendly also. You know, they're having a cortisol spike, but it's because they are so excited. They have to get to that person. They want all of the pets and they're going, this is amazing. But still, to the random person walking down the street, your 100-pound lab is now barking and wiggling with his feet in the air, and they also do not want to come pet your dog.
Be very dangerous to you walking them. I mean, even if the dog is happy and excited and trying to charge at the other thing, that's dangerous for you walking them. So again, I mean, the feelings are behind what's going on are important to know, but it doesn't totally change the way we work through these things. You know, the results could still be really, really terrible on either with a super happy dog or a really upset dog. I mean, either one can go bad really quickly. I mean, even if let's say your dog is super happy and excited, they want to go see the thing, you drop the leash, and then they go and they charge up very rudely to another dog who's maybe good with dogs or not. A lot of dogs are going to look at that rude behavior and tell them to back off and go away. It's not just because they're a wonderful, delightful dog who really wants all the pets. They do need to learn that there are times where they can't get all the pets. It's just dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we start moving into the situations, again, they're very controlled situations where we're introducing these stimuli in very small amounts. We also start working on a lot of our handler skills. So the things that we're doing with our dog to prevent them from escalating or to remove ourselves from the situation if we do get stuck in a situation that we're not prepared to handle. You know, we talk about too, if you end up in a situation where your dog is going to react, even though you're going through the training, you just know it's going to be too difficult for them. That's not a time to sit there and try to train through it. That's a time to take your dog and nicely get them out of the way. We call it an emergency U-turn. So that's something we teach clients. We want you to signal to your dog that, okay, it's time, we're gonna go the other way, in a nice, happy voice. The dog doesn't need to be worried about anything. Absolutely. Also, you know, it's important for us as handlers to sit there and take a deep breath and not stress out. If we immediately choke up on the leash and we're dragging our dog out of the way, we're like, oh gosh, and shaking and terrified and looking over our shoulder the whole time, our dogs are gonna be freaking out too. They're gonna know something's up. They feel that we're stressed out. They can smell that we're stressed out. And it's just, you're setting everyone up to fail. That can be hard. It takes time to get used to. And that's why a lot of these handler skills are really important. Using these skills that you can learn with a professional trainer will give you the confidence to know that either you can train through a situation and you're using it to your advantage, or it's one that you're not quite ready for, but you can get out of it safely. And that does have a lot to do with our confidence as the person on the, you know, the other end of the leash. So a lot of the things we do a lot of games, we do pattern games. I tell clients all the time that these look really stupid and really simple. Like sometimes as simple as dropping a treat on the ground, waiting for your dog to eat it, and then look back up at you, and then you drop another treat. It looks like I'm telling you to do the easiest thing, and you're, you know, and it's like, why would this ever help my dog stop barking at other dogs? It doesn't make sense. But we're using all of those parts of the brain that the dog needs to focus on us instead of the other things going on, that they can learn to look over and then return their focus to us. So some of these games are really stupid and simple. And other games too, like the mat work, which Crystal can talk about. Mat work is useful for so many things, even outside of reactivity. It's just a really great foundation skill for all dogs to have. So do you want to talk about that and how you use it in activity?
Yeah, so mat work is one of those things that I teach all of my dogs, and there's been many times that past clients have come to me with a new issue, and I've told them, your dog knows how to go to his mat. Tell him to go to his mat. And they're like, oh, that's amazing. Oh, it solves so many problems. So simply put, mat work just means that we have developed such a high reinforcement history for laying down on a dog bed or laying down on any sort of station that your dog will choose that over anything else. So I can station my dogs on the couch, on a picnic bench, on their actual dog bed. When we are in class, they will station on a yoga mat because it's very easy to move around. I have a good friend with a little dog who uses a placemat to station on because her dog fits on a placemat. And it's just one of those areas where we need the dog to not do the behavior that they are doing, but any other behavior will do. Go over there and lay down. It's a great filler for don't do what you are doing. I would rather you be doing literally anything else. But dogs have a hard time choosing literally anything else. So we give them the construct of go lay on a mat. So we spend lots of time working with mat work in our reactive dog cases because it gives the dog an alternate behavior. So I don't care what the dog is doing. They can't be barking and lunging. So they can't bark and lunge if they are laying on a mat and eating. So in the flip side of this, like when we're working with dogs who are very fearful of other dogs, it also gives the dog a safe space to go to. So it teaches the dog to move away from the thing on their own. Because as we leave the mat and we start to get closer to the thing that is scary, if at any point the dog wants to go back to the mat, that is always going to have reinforcement history. That is always going to get treats. So if the dog is choosing not to react to the thing and not to bark and lunge, but instead to turn around and ask to go back to the mat, that's a success. The dog has chosen not to bark and lunge at the thing. That is a win. So we use that to sort of give the dog a safe space, to give the dog a way to communicate with us that this is too hard for them. Because that is where the barky lungy comes in, is that we're asking the dog to do too much, and the only way that they know how to tell us that it's too hard or that we're asking too much of them is to bark and lunge, because then we bring them out of the situation. So if we have a very clear, if you lay on the mat, you will also get treats, they have another alternate behavior of, I'm going to turn away from this thing and go lay down so that I can get some treats for something else. And it helps us go, okay, we got too close, but your dog made really good decisions. And in a practical term, what ends up happening is if the other dog is walking down the street and getting too close, your dog is going to choose to lay down. And so at any point, if your dog is laying in somebody's yard, you as an owner can go, oh man, they are choosing to lay down instead of freak out at that dog. All the snacks. You now get all the snacks. And so those are the layers that we work up to when we add in our mat work into our barky lungy kind of training plans to kind of help give us a little bit more communication on how the dog is actually feeling in those situations.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you talked about it in terms of communication too, that we're giving the dog a way to tell us that they are not okay and they need help. That's more appropriate than the barky lunchy. And that is something too that we spend a lot of time working with on the people side, is learning how to communicate to their dog without using the leash. Because that can, that tension, that tightening up on the leash can set your dog up to be stressed out, just like smelling us being nervous and all of these other things. If you go and you're trying to get out of a situation and you're yanking your dog back, it's one, just not a good feeling for the dog. Two, they know something's up and they're just not going to want to do what you want them to do. So we do teach a lot of like the emergency U-turn. We teach people to use their body language, use their voices, and I mean, really in the beginning, use food itself to bring dogs away, and not rely on that tool to tell, not rely on the leash as a tool to tell your dog what to do. That you can build that connection with them where they can still hear you even though these things are going on, and you can help them move along. I think sometimes we're really quick to rely on our leash, and the leash really should just be a tether to you. It should not be it shouldn't be a training tool, really, right, Crystal, in this situation? I mean, there are situations where you would use the leash as a training tool, but this is not one of them for me.
Yeah, no, so at the end of the day, you want your dog to be mentally connected to you. That's the goal with all of my working with my dogs, working with any of my clients' dogs, is to build that relationship so that the dog is mentally connected to you always. So when you speak, the dog knows, hey, this is important and I need to collect this information, versus waiting to hit the end of the leash or waiting for that communication from the leash. I always tell people we want to use the leash as a seat belt, not a steering wheel. So this leash is there just in case your dog decides to do something stupid, but it is not there to give him directions. It's there just in case your dog decides to chase a bunny. It's there just in case your dog does get too close to that other dog and starts freaking out. But really, at the end of the day, you should not be relying on your leash to get your dog from point A to point B. Your dog and you should be able to get from point A to point B together, mentally connected.
Yeah, and I think people a lot of times are amazed too when they see it finally working. Crystal and I have both walked and loved and shared homes with very reactive dogs before. And it can be stressful and frustrating and emotionally draining living with a dog like that, especially if you live in a busy neighborhood where you don't have an option to take your dog out other than going on walks. It can be really scary. It sucks. And so once you do get to that point where you are walking with a loose leash and you can talk to your dog and be like, hey, come on, let's go this way. We're just going to turn around, or we're going to go over here to the right. I tell my dogs all the time, there are some situations where we'll walk right by, and other situations where we're just going to stop off to the side. You and I are going to play a quick game here, and then we're going to go on our way, and I'll say, okay, go play, usually when they're on a long line. And they can go back to doing whatever they were doing. There's never any tension on the leash. I usually, if I'm using a long line, I'll step on it in an area that they have. It's really important to me that your dog always has freedom to move around, but not enough space, like not enough room on the leash to be able to get to whatever that trigger would be. Obviously safety is the top priority, but giving them still that ability to move around safely can be really important for dogs. And you can do it. You don't have to, go up and hold them, by their collar on the neck while you wait for the other dog to pass by and they're, still trying to get to that dog and barking and lunging. It's totally doable. And it's like a huge deep breath once you're able to do it. It's actually really awesome. And it all comes from putting all of these pieces together. So Crystal, you want to go through kind of our recap on all of the things about reactivity?
Yeah, so as we wrap up a little bit, so reactivity as a definition is any of the barky, lungy, flipping out like a ninja, acting like a Fruit Loop, behaviors that are incredibly embarrassing walking down the street. So any of those things that you can put into that category is kind of what we're talking about today. Usually those are stemmed from frustration and fear, and we've unpacked that a little bit. Either one, it doesn't, it's important to know where your dog is coming from, but it doesn't really change the training plan much, especially at the beginning. We got to get those foundation behaviors underway first so that we can get you through your day-to-day life with your dog safely. And then as you start to unpack those day-to-day things, then we start working on really helping your dog to feel better about their trigger being in close proximity to them, and understanding what alternate behaviors that you're looking for to give them the same result and helping them to feel safe, and understand the rules in those situations.
Yeah, so that's about it, right?
Yeah, that's our class on reactivity. I have to say that this is probably one of the behaviors that we work with the most often. I want to say I probably only have 2 clients currently that are not reactive dogs.
Yeah, about the same. Yeah.
So I 98% of the phone calls that we get are dogs that are flipping out at the end of the leash. So if this is something that you're really struggling with, reach out to us, because we can get you on that path and give you the tools that you need so that you can start making a difference and you can start getting back out with your dog as soon as possible.
Yeah, and enjoying those walks again. I mean, right now, the way things are, if you have a reactive dog, those walks are not enjoyable for anyone. And they can be enjoyable for both of you. It just takes a little bit of time and work to get there.
Yeah.
So that's it for today. Be sure to join us in a couple weeks for our next episode.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.